It's not a strange thing for the Torah to write in the Chumash about Rivka, about the fact that she'd not known no man and she'd not done this and she'd not done that. I mean, she was rather Emma, wouldn't expect that she would be. Doesn't say it about anybody else. Why Davka about her, to say? Because she grew up with Lavan and all that, but B'chol Zot, it seems a little strange.
It is strange.
And did you look up the Sikha?
Oh, tomorrow's the last day I can tell you.
Right.
We forgot about that. So now we get into the explanation.
What page are we?
30.
Why did it just say 112? I'm on the wrong section. 30. It says voracious. Wrong.
Wrong book.
Right. I knew there was something. Second. Oh, this looks like it better. We're on page 30. And whereabouts are we?
Second column.
Yeah.
And now we get into Vinam Shechazu.
Where?
About 15 lines from the bottom. Vinam Shechazui b'shtei b'chinot, kfila u'klisha.
Okay.
So now, he explains that what did the Arizal write? He wrote these songs to be sung in each meal of Shabbos, each of the 3 meals. And in the morning meal, he has this line, Yagale lantame de vitrisar nahame. You should reveal to us the taste or the meaning in the 12 loaves of bread. The inu natbishme, which are a letter of his name. What's a letter of his name? The letter of his name is the meaning, and not the loaves of bread.
Mm-hmm.
Although it also has some connection to the loaves of bread. We'll see as we go on. But the pshat is that he means that the meaning of the loaves of bread, meaning the energy that you're going to receive now from above to below, like we said yesterday, that on Shabbat the worlds elevate, and therefore you don't have to clarify, select, purify the food. The body doesn't do it the same way. The body, of course, does it the same way, but symbolically, it's now symbolic of energy coming from above to below, not from below to above, as it does on the weekdays. And this meaning, this energy that's coming down, says the Arizal, is a letter in his name, Kfila u'klisha, which is kaful, double, and kalush. And kalush, we said, has a few meanings. It means, the way I would read it as a modern Hebrew speaker would be, kalush would be weak, shvach. But the real meaning that he means here is like kilshon, like something that's extended, like a pitchfork that has extended teeth that go out. What's the connection? Why is he? Okay, this is it's poetry, so it's not exact, but it's based somewhat on the Zohar. So this energy that comes down through 2 different channels. One is called the double channel, one is called the extended channel. It's called extended, the klisha. Perush klisha hi hamshachat yudin vevavin שמiyud na'asa vav שהיוד עצמה נמשכה ונעשית vav. So klisha, the extension here, is in the 2 letters yud and vav. Okay?
Mm-hmm.
But the idea here is, we'll say first simply and then we'll get into the details of it, because there's a lot of details. The simple meaning is that all we mean here is that in the name that's called Ma'arat HaMachpelah, the name of God that equals 52, the filling of God's name that equals 52, Yud, Vav, Dalid, Hey, Hey, Vav, Vav, Hey, Hey. We said that's called the name of the Machpelah, the double name. Why? Because each letter is filled with either the exact same letter or with the equivalent in number of the same letter. So Yud becomes Yud Vav Dalet. Vav Dalet equals 10 and Yud equals 10. So you filled it with Vav Dalet, which is equal to the origin, the Yud. The Hey becomes Hey Hey, so you just filled it with another Hey. The Vav becomes Vav Vav, and Hey Hey. In this name, the Yud is unique. The Yud and the Vav are unique. The Heys are different. We have to understand why. That'll be in the details. But the difference is that the Yud starts out as a point and it extends. That's the Klisha.
But it only extends a tiny little bit.
The Vav, it extends all the way down, and then with the Dalid, it adds another dimension. It adds a top part also. So the Yud represents moving in dimensions. From 0 dimensions to 1 dimension to 2 dimensions. So there's a process here. That's called Klisha, that's called extension.
I thought Hanshocha was extension. I thought Hanshocha was extension.
10. That's what we're saying. That this whole thing is an extension. When you say extension, you have to understand, what do you mean? What do I mean when I say extension? When you say, I have this pole that, a stick that sort of closes into itself. So when you extend it, you haven't added anything. It's still one-dimensional, but it just became longer. So that's one type of extension. But it could be a different type of extension in dimensions, meaning that I didn't just extend it in one direction, suddenly it opens up in another direction and in another direction. So by the Yud, there's development that is not just elongating something. This extension, this hamshacha, drawing down, creates new dimensions. It creates something new as it comes down. We know all about this. What is that? Oh, we'll get to that in the details. On the other hand, the Hey, it just copies itself. The Hey just becomes another Hey. So what's the difference between the first Hey and the second Hey? So as we'll explain, okay, that's one. So when you say Olam, perfect example. So let's do the Hey Hey first because it's simpler. Because you just gave the best example. Olam Haba as opposed to Olam Hazeh. The world to come as opposed to this world. What are we talking about? So when I was younger, what did I think? Like every good person. Maybe even I saw Star Trek.
Free ice cream is night and day.
What?
Free ice cream night and day.
So, I was much more sophisticated than that. I would have my ice cream on a different planet. Because I saw Star Trek or whatever it was.
Okay.
So I had this thing, I was thinking that we need to go to it's a different world. It's just different, it's not the same thing. We might have ice cream, because ice cream's great, but it's going to be somewhere else. And slowly as you mature and you begin to understand that these are all attempts to explain something deeper, so you begin to understand, and finally when I finally read the Rebbe, it became abundantly clear that Olam Haba is here. What's the difference between this world and the next world? Revelation. Whether Hashem will be revealed or not. So the two Heys, which you just said, they represent a state of concealment. The first Hey is when something is concealed, it's pregnant, it hasn't come out yet. And what comes out is exactly the same thing as the first thing. It looks the same, but it is different. It's a revelation of something new. So that's in the Hey and the Hey. But the Yud is something new, because every time that it extends, it opens up a new dimension. There you could say that it's like having a new planet. It's having this planet, and then suddenly another one, and another one. Of course, that would just be an extension in one dimension, because if all the planets were the same, it should be the same as just having a bigger Earth. So you have to think about that something new is being opened up. So that you can't really call Olam Haba and Olam Hazeh. It's really not the point. There you're trying to talk about something different. It's not about... It's Hashem appearing in ways that were impossible to imagine before. It wasn't just impregnated. When Abraham tells us Hashem is one, So that just needs to be revealed. Because we believe that. And as much as that runs contradictory to what we experience and see, so it's something that you can at least hold in your heart. You understand it, and you understand the implications. But when you talk about the Yud extending and opening up new dimensions, here's something that is almost impossible to understand, because what would it mean to have another dimension here? What does that mean? But on Shabbos, that's exactly the point, that what's being drawn down is Klisha also. It's Kfila, it's double, because the Yud is equal to the Vav Daled, but the Vav Daled are something different than the Yud. So now the details, the sticky details, where it becomes that the picture of the Yud opening up into Yud Vav Daled is the whole basis of the Arizal's understanding of creation. And here I don't mean the creation of the world. I mean creation in general, anything that's created. The Arizal understands that it begins as a point, and it extends down as a line, and then circles come out of it. Every time it extends down, a new reality emerges from this, like a new three-dimensional something. What would this be like? When a person experiences real change in their life, so that's like the Yud. The idea is that you have to go back to Tzimtzum, you have to go back to being a point, meaning sort of being willing to give up on everything that you have. And then you begin to extend like a line, and from that extension, a new world emerges, a new reality emerges. And this is much more than just revealing something that was hidden until now. This, the Arizal says, this has the makings of Yesh Me'ayin. This is like something coming out of nothing. It's much more than just revealing something that was already there. The child being born is just revealing what was in the mother's womb anyway. But Yud Vav Daled is a conception. It's creating the child. It's not just revealing it. That's why the Yud Vav Daled comes before the Hey Hey. Because you first have to, as it were, create this new reality, and then it's a question of revealing it or not. So he says on Shabbos, when we're bringing down with food, we're bringing down this energy from the higher reality, from Tohu, and again, we'll get into that today. So the bringing it down is like a new creation. It's like repeating the process of creation altogether. And it requires a whole different level of bittul, it's called. Meaning, the mother carrying the child in her womb needs a lot of grit to make it through the pregnancy. But in the end, that's very different than the actual act of conception, which requires a lot more than that. Because to conceive, you have to nullify yourself. To conceive, you have to be willing to be, let's call it, impregnated. You have to be willing to forge a bond with something entirely different than you. That's a lot harder, actually, than even carrying the child for 9 months. I'm giving an example. It could be that, one woman will tell me, what are you talking about? It's a lot harder to have the child. So the point is that what's happening to you in the act of conception is much more nullifying than the act of carrying a child and then birthing it. So he wants to say that during the weekdays, we were doing more of the hey thing. What was in the food and was concealed in it becomes revealed. So that's from below to above. That's called, what we said, the process of birurim, of the food, that you were rectifying it, we're elevating it, we're taking out the select and feeding the higher and higher organs. Everything is going higher. So that's hey. But what we're doing on Shabbos is the Klisha. We're doing the Yud Vav Daled, the first letter of Hashem's name. That's energy for that. I say it differently. It's not that we're doing that, we're getting the energy for being able to do that during the next week. That's where you get that. And what is this energy? This is the energy that we call creating a new world. It's creating a new life. It's creating a new direction. Entirely new. Every once in a while, the Rebbe reinvented himself. Suddenly, wasn't what the biggest difference was between the year of the mourning for the Friediger Rebbe and when he became Rebbe. Mamish had to reinvent himself. He also reinvented himself between the time that he was with the Friediger Rebbe and when the Friediger Rebbe passed away. Obviously, I don't think anybody heard that the Rebbe went to the Ohel. There was no Ohel, but he went to some other Ohel somewhere and did what he did to hear his predecessors. He didn't do anything like that, at least as far as I know. There's a Ma'amar Ishtatchut from the Middler Rebbe. There's the Ma'amar Ishtatchut from the Reb Hillel. He knew them. I don't know if he went somewhere in order to hear answers about things. I know the Friediger Rebbe did. In fact, the Friediger Rebbe once said that the reason why he came to Eretz Yisrael was because he couldn't go back to Russia. He couldn't go to Rostov to hear his father. So he came here to the Avos. And he said he was able to do much of the same here as it was, but it wasn't the same because it's much bigger distance in generations. The generational gap was too big. But once the Friediger Rebbe passed away, so the Rebbe started from the moment he started going to the Ohel, and he says he hears. He says he's having a conversation. And since it's well documented in Chabad, and there's been a lot written about it, and even the instructions on how to do it have been publicized, and everybody can read them and learn them and try his luck, see if he can do the same thing. But the Rebbe had to reinvent himself. Because he had never done, I don't know if he ever did that before. And now he did it, and it works. So now he has a direct line to his predecessor, to the Friediger Rebbe, and so on. To invent yourself, you need Shabbos. To reinvent yourself, you need Shabbos. Every day you're working, in the weekdays we're working more on revealing what there already is. But Shabbos is a time when the energy comes from above to below, is to do the Yud thing, which is each time, which is a new dimension in a person's life. But the important point is, and it can't be forgotten, that's why on Shabbos you don't do other things. You have to go back to being a point. And you become a point in the first meal. The first meal of Shabbos is like being a Yud, the Yud of Yud Vav Dalet. It's going back to being a point of nothingness. The morning meal is the Vav. And then the world that's going to be created from this Shabbos, every Shabbos, and this is what eating does for you, is the Dalet at the end in the third meal. And the amazing thing is that if you understand the depth of what's going on, you understand why the Zohar says that you don't eat the third meal. You really don't eat there. What do you mean? You eat something to be yotze the halacha, but you don't have a meal. You don't do it on bread. And why? Because there's something new emerging. It's very hard while you're emerging. You want to dedicate yourself to that process. And eating is not exactly the best way to do it. You've already brought down the Yud and Vav. The extension now is going to happen is like an empty space. You're creating now an empty, hollow space in which the sigul that's coming out, in which this world is going to be created, the new you for the next week. So that's in general with some of the details. Now let's see it inside. Sorry. Perush klisha, the klisha means Amshachat Yudin Vavin Shem Yud Nasa Vav Sheyud Atzmon Imshacha V'Naset Vav. So the Yud has to be transformed into a Vav. That's the klisha. That's the main thing. And that's why you said this in the morning meal, because the Yud is now becoming a Vav. It's becoming extended into a vav. כי לפי שהיוד הוא בחינת צמצום. Because the yud symbolizes a state of nullification, of tzimtzum, of contraction. Lachen, that's why, because of this willingness to remove myself, that's why יכולה להיות מן ההמשכה בבחינת ו' מן היוד עצמה. Because of the contraction, I'm able to bring about a new dimension coming out, the vav, from a point to a line. Now we have a partial sentence that wasn't finished. It's finished in other hanachos of this mimer, but it's clear what he's saying. אבל ההי, שהיא התפשטות אורך ורוחב, אינה כן. But the hay, which is already a fully formed world, it has all the dimensions. The hay has a top line, a right line, and a left line. So it has all three dimensions. It's already a formed reality. Because of that, it can't do hitpashtus. It does revelation, it does gilui. Okay? So the difference here is that the Yud Vav Daled is what we call etzem v'itpashtut. Is the extension of the object itself. Okay? We've talked a lot about, for the Alter Rebbe, the difference between etzem and itpashtut and between Ha'elam and Gilui is the basis of understanding Chassidus. That's why the first mimer he said in Liadi, when he moved to Liadi, finally, I told you the story already.
No.
I told you the story. But your stories are always new to me, and my stories are always new to you. So it's a good pair. That way we can repeat it a lot of times, feel good about ourselves. The Alter Rebbe explained that the reason that he was arrested and charged with treason was revealed to him during his arrest when the Baal Shem Tov and the Maggid came to him. Right. And they told him the reason you're being arrested and you're being charged with this is because you've been revealing Chassidus too much.
So he said, I'll cut down.
So he said, should I stop? And they said, on the contrary, you should increase. And indeed, he came out of that arrest and he was freed and everything exonerated and so on. And a year and a half, he didn't go back to the ocean where he was. He stayed in Petersburg for that year and a half. And just as they think he came back to the ocean, he was arrested again. Between the two arrests, it was only a year and a half. I may be getting the locations wrong, but I think he didn't go back to the ocean until the very end, and he went back to the ocean and then he was arrested again. The simple reason was because he didn't make good on his commitment. And he said that I was told that I should increase and reveal more and explain more, but he didn't. Maybe he did a little, but it was more of the same. And we know this because a lot of what he said in that year, Taf Kuf Nun Chet, no, Taf Kuf Nun Tet. Some of Taf Kuf Nun Chet and some from Taf Kuf Nun Tet. I've got the years wrong. He was arrested in Taf Kuf Samach. So in Taf Kuf Samach and Taf Kuf Samach Aleph, we have some of what he said. I don't think we know 100%. Maybe Levine in the library knows exactly what he said during those years, because it was never ordered as a Sefer Ma'amarim. Because anybody who looks at the Chabad library, looks at it and sees, why do the Alter Rebbe's Ma'amarim start from Taf Kuf Samach Beis? Why did they start from 1802? He was born in he was 60 then. He was 60, he was 58. Why, a little bit less, he was 57. Why, what happened to everything he said until then? What are you telling me that until then he didn't know how to say a Maimar? The answer is he didn't say Maimarim. He said short Torahs, like the other Rebbeim, the other Talmidim of the Maggid. For him, the arrest was a turning point in his understanding of what his duty was. He said later that the Maggid had told him, even when the Maggid was alive, that he should explain further, that he can't leave leave Hasidic teachings as just inspirational. He has to actually explain what is it, where did this come from? Explain the whole logic behind it. But it seems that he didn't do this until after the second arrest. And between the first arrest and the second arrest, nothing really changed. But some of the Maimarim are written in what we call a Salach Lojna. There's a sefer of short Maimarim, it's over there in the bookshelf, which is a document of that year and a half, pretty much. It also has some things that are earlier, but it's from that year and a half. And they're short. The longest there is like a page and a half of the small books. Yeah, this one, it's 2 pages. So he wasn't shalem. He wasn't doing this wholeheartedly yet. He didn't accept yet the mission that he was given, or he had his other concerns. I don't know what it was, but he didn't do it for that year and a half. And when he came out from the second arrest, which he said was more difficult for him than the first one, even though the charge was much less. But I think, I don't know if he ever explained it, but it was a feeling of, I could have prevented this. I think that's why it was more difficult, because they had told me already. I already knew that my duty was to explain this the way I'm explaining here. By the way, this is very short, so I'm not sure where this came from. But apparently but we have a longer version of it, so I know where this came from. This is what his brother wrote. This is a hanafa from his brother, from the Ma'aril. But his son, when he wrote the Maimer, it's perfect. It's beautiful. It's like everything is fully written out. So it's really, I don't know why they put this one in here, because it could
Where
be
is that one?
What? The other one's in the Siddur and Dach. On the same words. So that's what I learned before I learned this one, because that way you understand what this one says. When he came out, he moved to Liadi. From the second arrest, he came out. He moved to Liadi, and then he started explaining everything in length. And everything started becoming really long and really well worked out, like all the details. And probably the very first thing he taught was the difference between etzem hitpashtut and helem v'gilui. That you can't understand what the Baal Shem Tov was talking about, you can't understand the Maggid, you can't understand all of Jewish mysticism if you don't understand the difference between these two concepts. And he spends pages upon pages giving 5 examples of each one, so that you fully understand the difference. Now, to tell you that I fully understand the difference, I don't. Even after the 5 examples. So, my brain is weak. It's not easy to understand exactly all the examples and how each one sheds a new light on the topic. I'm still waiting to hear a good cheer on it. What I understood. It wasn't so enlightening for me. I need more. But what is the main difference? The main difference is that etzem v'tpashtut means that the etzem is extending. The etzem itself, you would say, the thing in and of itself has now extended itself and shown up here. That's the thing in and of itself. Extension is a new process. There have to be new dimensions created for it to extend from here to there. An example, type of example, which is not one of the examples he gives, so I hope it's right. Well, the example that he gives is light in a room. For them, light was obviously a candle. And so when you light the candle, the light distributes in the room. He says it's the same light, it just takes a time to fill the room. In their time, the rooms were very musty. They didn't have big windows like we do. So you actually saw the process. I mean, you could see it, that the light was extending, filling the interior. That opens up new dimensions, meaning until now the light was just concentrated in one point, and now it's extended out, and it's opened up new dimensions into which it now appears. So it's almost like the light created its volume, like where it now appears. He'elem v'gilui, which is concealment and revelation, is when there's no new dimensions created. It's just that something was here, but surprise, here you just didn't see it, and now you see it.
Hiding in the cupboard.
Okay, that's all. You just opened the cover. Now I see it. It was there all the time. That doesn't require new dimensionality. That doesn't require something new. It says the Alter Rebbe, this is the basis of understanding everything that the Baal Shem Tov talked about. I mean, that is the difference, philosophically speaking, that the Baal Shem Tov was working on in order to develop Chassidus. So here he's saying so here's an application of it. In eating, that during the weekdays, all we are doing is we're eating from concealment to revelation. We're only revealing what was in the food anyway. Mm-hmm. Those are the sparks that were hidden, concealed inside the food. We're elevating it. There's a process, it's called birurim. That's a big chiddush. I don't think anybody before the Baal Shem Tov, or before the Alter Rebbe explained it this way, explained that birurim is important, but it's not creating anything new. Nobody dwelt on that. It was a big chap. You just elevated the spark. That's a big deal. That's really a big deal. Because look, there was holiness that was in jail, and you opened the door and you let it out. Says the Alter Rebbe, says the Baal Shem Tov, that's like opening the cupboard. There's nothing new created. The same energy that was here before is now here, is still here. You didn't do anything new. That's what the weekdays are for. But the Geula, the redemption, that's etzem v'itpashtut. That's something entirely different. That is coming from above to below. That's the eating of Shabbos, where you're bringing down the etzem itself. You're bringing down the essence itself, not just allowing it to appear. And to do that, by doing that, you're creating new dimensions in reality. You're creating a new reality. It's not just opening the cupboard and seeing what's inside. You're building a whole new house. It's completely different. So that's the cliche. That's the idea here. So let's try to finish. We have a couple of minutes. It's very simple from here.
Okay.
So
finish this
said
now.
the hey.
Finish this now. We'll look at that secret tomorrow.
Then we'll do the secret. That's what I want. ואין התפשטות האור ורוחב של מעלה יכולה להתגלות למעלה כמו שהוא למעלה בבחינת האור ורוחב ועד אין קץ אלא המשכה היא בחינת האחרת למטה והיא בחינת המילוי של ה' דהיינו כוח האש שהיה בהיעלם למעלה. So because you can't receive it the way it is above in the hay, it has to be revealed, that's all. But really, you're just copying it from here to there. כי לעולם המילוי הוא מה שבהיעלם ומה שבהיעלם למעלה יצא מהיעלם אל הגילוי למטה. So Milui in general is revealing what was concealed. But in the hay, you see that what was concealed is exactly what was revealed. So it's all the same. By the Yud, there was also something concealed there. But to reveal itself, it has to go through hitpashtus. It has to go through an extension. והיינו בחינת כפילה שהוא בחינת המילוי ההין כנודע מעניין המכפלה. אך כל זה הוא שאנו מקבלים השפעה על ידי י"ב לחמים בזמן הזה. אבל העתיד לבוא יגלה לנו תמי לבצסרן העמי, ואז לא יהיה בחינת כפילה, רק ההי עצמה שלמעלה יהיה לה גילוי למטה, גם כן על ידי כי יגלה לנו תמי, כמו שכתוב ביום ההוא יהיה. It says, in the future, know that even by the hay, there will be something new.
Oh.
That now, all you see is what was in the cupboard.
So Mashiach is Hispastus.
Okay? Mashiach has to be Hispastus. But the idea is that what was inside will now be revealed outside, but not as a copy. The thing itself will be revealed. So when you open the cupboard, it's not a good enough example.
New version, updated version.
Okay. When you open
same thing, same car, but a new model, so with additions. No?
It's like saying that when I open the cupboard, and now I saw what was inside the cupboard, that's still not the thing itself. What I'm seeing from afar. It's not here. There's a distance between us.
Okay.
But now this will come out of its garb entirely, and it will emerge into my world. So he says that's by the hay. Even the hay will enjoy what the yud has. This already gets into a further detail, which is that in the future Hashem's name will become Yud Kei, and not Yud Kei Vav Kei. Now we have to add one last piece, which is, even though hey is inside each hay has a revelation of another hay, there's also a way of seeing it that there's a vav in between the two hays. And so the top hay and the bottom hay, the first hay and the last hay in Hashem's name, are actually, one is a copy of the other. The way we explain that is that our world is like a copy. It's the Malchus of Bina. It's just a copy of the mother. So we call it the daughter and the mother. But we say there's a difference between them. There's still a difference, even though one revealed the other. It says in the future that Vav will no longer be an extension. Here's a very interesting thing, that sometimes the extension, creating a new reality, is negative. Because if you need a new reality to bring down something, so maybe it's not the same thing exactly. If it needs more dimensions. And really maybe what you're looking for, and I know this is getting confusing, but is for the original thing to come out exactly as it was in our reality. So to say this in a way that will make sense, that for me today to accept, for instance, that Hashem is one, I have to create a lot of new dimensions. What are all these dimensions? A lot of beliefs that I have. I'm like holding it up, buttressing it up, with all kinds of additions to keep it up, to keep that structure up. It says in the future you won't need these buttresses. You won't need to support it. The thing as it is will appear here. Say it another way, when you think about building the Beis HaMikdash. So when you build something, you have to build a foundation, you have to build walls, everything else. What's the idea of the Beis HaMikdash coming down from above? It's like saying, no, this is not going to be built the way that you're used to build. You're not going to have to buttress it. You're not going to have to lay a foundation. It's not going to be like that. It's the way it is above is how it's going to appear below. That will be the true revelation of the concealment, which is different than how it's done today. That today, even when you're revealing something, in the end, to reveal it, you have to add new things to reality. So this is all sounds very theoretical and wasn't explained well, so maybe...
it's a hard subject.
Like I said, this was his main subject.
Did you go and visit? Visit Hashem?
Are we allowed to? I thought they don't want visitors.
No, the place is packed full.
Yeah? Okay.
All the corridors.
So I'll go today.
I went yesterday. You go for Mincha?